The story of the Titanic, the giant ship and the cold, dark sea. This is a story about a great ship, a young man, and a night that changed the world forever. It is a story of dreams and of a cold, dark sea. Leo was a young man from a small town. His town was quiet, and nothing exciting ever happened there. Every day was the same. He woke up, he worked on his family's small farm, and he went to sleep. But Leo had a big dream. He wanted to see the world. He read books about faraway places and looked at pictures of big cities. More than anything, he loved the ocean. He dreamed of sailing on a huge ship and crossing the great Atlantic Ocean to America. One day, he saw an advertisement in a newspaper. A new ship, the biggest ship in the world, needed workers. Its name was the Titanic. For Leo, this was a sign. This was his chance. He said goodbye to his family, packed a small bag, and went to the city of Southampton. When he first saw the Titanic, he could not speak. The ship was extremely large. It was like a mountain made of steel. It was longer than 3 football fields and as tall as a city building. The ship had many windows, shining like little lights. 4 huge chimneys rose high into the sky. Leo felt very, very small standing next to it. He thought that humans could build anything. This ship was proof. It was a beautiful and powerful machine. He felt so proud that he was going to work on this ship. Leo's job was not important. He was a helper. He helped clean the rooms and carry things for the richer passengers. His own room was small and deep inside the ship, with no window. He shared it with 3 other young men. But Leo did not mind. He was on the Titanic, and that was all that mattered. The first few days were full of excitement. He worked hard, but in his free time, he explored the giant ship. The Titanic was like a floating city. It had everything. There were expensive restaurants, a swimming pool, a library, and beautiful rooms for the first-class passengers. These rooms were like rooms in a palace, with soft beds and beautiful wooden furniture. Leo would quietly look into these areas when he was cleaning. He saw men in expensive suits and women in beautiful dresses. They laughed and talked, and their lives seemed so different from his. Then there were the second-class areas. They were also very nice, much nicer than anything Leo had ever seen before. The people there were teachers, writers, and small business owners. They were comfortable and happy. Leo spent most of his time in the third-class areas. This was where the poorest passengers stayed. They were families from all over Europe, hoping for a new life in America. They did not have much money, but they had a lot of hope. In the evenings, they played music and danced. They shared stories and dreamed about their future in a new country. Leo liked these people. They were like him, simple people with big dreams. He felt a connection to them. For 4 days, the Titanic sailed across the calm blue ocean. The sky was clear and the sun was warm. The journey was smooth and peaceful. The great ship moved through the water with confidence. Everyone said the ship was unsinkable. It was so strong and so well built that nothing could harm it. People felt completely safe. Leo started to feel comfortable. The work was hard, but the rhythm of the ship was calming. The ship rocked slowly. He always heard the low sound of the engines and felt the fresh air. It became normal. He made a friend, a boy named Thomas, who worked in the kitchen. They would talk about their dreams for America. Leo wanted to find a good job and maybe one day own a small piece of land. Thomas wanted to open his own bakery. On the 5th day, the weather changed. The air became very cold. The sun was still shining, but there was no warmth. The ocean looked different too. It was darker and very, very still. It looked like a sheet of black glass. Experienced sailors on the ship felt a little uneasy. The sea should not be this quiet and this cold. That night, Leo finished his work and went to the deck for some fresh air. The sky was incredible. There was no moon, but there were thousands and thousands of stars. They were so bright and clear, brighter than he had ever seen them in his small town. The cold air felt sharp on his face. He looked out at the dark water. The ship was moving fast, a great island of light and warmth in a huge, dark, and silent world. He felt a little lonely, but also very peaceful. He thought about his family and about his future. He felt that his new life was just beginning. He stayed there for a long time, just watching the stars and the dark water. Then he went back inside to his small room to sleep. A few hours later, he was woken up by a strange feeling. It was not a loud noise. It was a long, low shaking. It was a sound like a giant piece of metal being scratched. The ship shook for a few seconds, and then it stopped. Everything was quiet again. Leo sat up in his bed. His roommates were also awake. They looked at each other, confused. What was that? They waited, but nothing happened. The ship was still moving. The engines were still running. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe they had hit a small piece of ice. They had heard there was ice in this part of the ocean. Leo tried to go back to sleep, but he couldn't. He felt a little scared, but he didn't know why. Then, a few minutes later, the engines stopped. The sudden silence was frightening. The great ship, always moving, always alive with the sound of its engines, was now quiet. It was just floating in the dark. This was not normal. Leo and his friends put on their clothes and went out into the hallway. Other workers were also coming out of their rooms. They were all asking the same question: what happened? An officer walked by and told everyone to stay calm. He said everything was fine. It was just a small problem, but his face looked worried. Leo did not believe him. He had a bad feeling. He and Thomas decided to go up to the upper decks. As they walked up the many stairs, they started to notice something strange. The floor was not flat anymore. It was tilted just a little bit. It was hard to notice at first, but it was there. When they reached the main deck, they saw a strange scene. Some passengers were still in their night clothes, laughing and talking. Some were even playing with pieces of ice that had fallen onto the deck. They did not understand the danger, but the ship's crew knew. They were running around, their faces pale and serious. They were starting to prepare the lifeboats. Leo's heart started to beat very fast. If they were preparing the lifeboats, it meant the ship was in serious trouble. He looked over the side of the ship. He could not see anything at first, just the dark water and the bright stars. But then he saw it. A huge shape, dark and white, was slowly moving away from the ship into the darkness. It was an iceberg, a mountain of ice. They had hit a mountain of ice. Panic started slowly. First, it was just a few people shouting. Then, more people started to realize what was happening. The ship was sinking. The giant Titanic was sinking. The crew started trying to get people into the lifeboats. They shouted, "Women and children first!" It was chaos. People were pushing and crying. Families were separated. Leo saw it all. He was just a boy from a small town, and now he was in the middle of this terrible nightmare. He did not know what to do. He was so scared. But then he saw a woman crying. She had lost her small child in the crowd. Leo forgot his own fear. He started helping her. He pushed through the people, calling the child's name. After a few minutes, he found the little boy crying near a staircase. He picked him up and carried him back to his mother. He helped them get into a lifeboat. The woman thanked him, her eyes full of tears. In that moment, Leo found a purpose. He could not save himself, maybe, but he could help others. He and Thomas started to help the crew. They helped guide people to the lifeboats. They carried children. They tried to keep people calm. But it was difficult. There were not enough lifeboats. There were over 2,000 people on the ship, but the lifeboats could only hold about half of them. This was a terrible fact that everyone started to understand. The ship was sinking faster now. The front of the ship was going down, and the back was rising into the air. The angle of the deck became very steep. It was hard to stand. People were sliding and falling. The beautiful lights of the ship started to flicker. The sound was terrible. There were terrible sounds all around. People were screaming, wood was breaking, and metal was making loud noises. It sounded like the ship was dying. Leo and Thomas were still on the ship. All the lifeboats were gone. They knew there was no escape now. They held onto a railing, looking at the chaos around them. They looked at each other. They did not say anything. There was nothing to say. They just held on tight as the ship tilted more and more. Suddenly, there was a huge noise, louder than anything before. The giant ship broke in two. Everything that was not fixed down slid into the water. Tables, chairs, plates, and people. Leo was falling, then sliding down the steep deck. He hit the cold water. It was so cold that he could not breathe. He swam away from the sinking ship. He found a piece of broken wood and held on to it. He watched as the back part of the Titanic rose straight up into the air. It stood there for a moment against the starry sky, a black shape with its lights still on. Then the ship made one last deep sound and slowly went down into the dark water. It was gone forever. After the ship was gone, there was a new sound. It was the sound of 1,000 people in the water shouting for help. Leo was one of them. He was in the middle of the dark, freezing ocean, surrounded by desperate cries. But the lifeboats were too far away, and they were afraid to come back. They were worried that too many people would try to get in and sink the small boats. Slowly, over the next hour, the shouting became quieter. The cold was doing its terrible work. One by one, people became silent. Soon, there was only a great, terrible silence, broken by the small sound of waves hitting the ice. Leo held onto his piece of wood. He was getting weaker. His body was numb. He could not feel his hands or his feet. He thought about his family, his small town, his dream of America. It all seemed so far away now. He was ready to give up. He started to close his eyes. But then, he heard a sound. A whistle. Someone was blowing a whistle. He opened his eyes. In the dark, he saw a lifeboat. It had come back. An officer was looking for survivors. Leo was too weak to shout. He tried to move, but his body would not obey. He thought it was the end. But the person in the lifeboat saw him. The boat came closer. Strong hands pulled him out of the freezing water and into the boat. He was saved. Leo spent the rest of his life in America. He got a job, he married, and he had children. He lived a long and simple life. But he never forgot that night. He never forgot the great ship, the stars, the cold, and the sound of the crying people. He often went to the ocean and just watched the waves. He thought about the Titanic, the ship of dreams. It was a symbol of human pride, a giant machine that was defeated by a piece of ice. But for Leo, it was also a memory of great sadness, of the many lives and dreams that were lost in the cold, dark sea. He was one of the lucky ones, and he lived his life for all the people who did not. If you are learning English and found this story helpful, please like and subscribe for more videos.